All right, it's 1:32, so I'm gonna go ahead and get us started. So, welcome everyone to our National Alliance for Water Innovation webinar today, with the title topic being WaterDAO with Aaron Mandell, who's the founder and Chief Executive Officer of Wacomet Water. So, thank you so much for joining us today. I just want to start off with some logistical reminders about the webinar. Everyone is in listen only mode. If you have any audio issues, please, a couple of options. You can reach out to me via the chat or try connecting with your phone as well. The phone number to dial in is in your Zoom invites. So in your email inboxes, you should be able to find that. But again, if you have any problems with that, please feel free to put those in the chat. So that's also a reminder that the chat is open. We welcome conversation, questions, whatever those might be in the chat, as well as a Q&A box on your Zoom settings. If you have questions for Aaron, please submit those in the Q&A box, and we've reserved some time at the end of this presentation to address those questions as well. Again, being a webinar, the Q&A in the chat box is your primary mode of communication with us. So please feel free to share any of your thoughts, comments, questions through that, and we'll make sure we get to those at the end of the webinar itself. And before further ado, I'm going to now pass it along to Jennifer Berry, who will be introducing Aaron.
All right, thank you, Pardeep. Hello, everybody. My name is Jennifer Berry, and I'm the Alliance Manager for NAWI. It's nice to see everybody here today. And we're happy to have Aaron Mandell here to speak with us today. And to just give you a bit of an introduction, Aaron is a technologist and entrepreneur who's led ideation and formation of several companies in the past. His background is in numerical simulation and hydrology of groundwater systems, and he conducted his graduate research under a joint fellowship with the University of Vermont and Tel Aviv University in Israel. And we're excited to have him here today. For those of you who are just joining, we are recording this session. We will also have it posted on the NAWI Alliance community website, and we'll post that link in the chat. But without further ado, we're going to hand it over to Aaron. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay.
You sound loud and clear.
Fantastic. So yeah, thank you very much to NAWI for giving me some time to talk about WaterDAO and what we're building here. If Pradeep, if you could go to the first slide, just wanted to spend a couple minutes kind of framing up the problem, I guess, as I view it. And I grabbed this quote here from a great book, which I would recommend, At the Base of the Giant's Throat, which recently came up. But it really sort of highlights that a big part of the problem is that the water strategy in the United States, a lot of it is based on hope. We're hoping that the infrastructure that we've built over the last 100 years is sufficient, and we're hoping that the water conditions return to the conditions that were there when we designed and implemented a lot of this water infrastructure. And I think for me at least, which is a big part of what drives my interest in this space, and for a lot of young people, I think we need sort of a more inspiring future as it relates to water, something that we can really hang our hats on and know that we can actually sort of design and build the future that we want. Next slide, please. And so part of the problem with water is that it's locked in a zero-sum paradigm. We're sort of stuck in this paradigm where we've been convinced that there's a finite amount of fresh water available. And so when shortages occur, it means that in order for people to have enough water, someone else has to have less, that the pie is finite. And I think that what's exciting about technology is it's really an antidote for that paradigm, that we can use technology to actually increase the pie. We don't have to be locked into this zero-sum thinking, that we can actually expand how we define water, where we get water from, because it is truly abundant. We live on a planet that is blessed with an enormous amount of water, but it's not always available, it's not always fresh, and it's not only usable. Next slide, please. And so a big part of the challenge when it comes to technology is that there's a cost curve, that we have to invest in technology in order to scale it up and ultimately bring down the costs. So there's an upfront investment. And so by subsidizing water and sort of ignoring the true cost of water, we're making it nearly impossible for the cost of technology to compete. Technologies like desalination, water treatment, and reuse can't compete with heavily subsidized water. And so when you look at the energy space as an analogy, renewable energy certificates or renewable energy credits are really what leveled the playing field for renewable energy and created both the market and also the portfolio standards necessary to scale renewable energy generation. And so part of what we're trying to build here is to do that same thing for water so that we can level the playing field and scale up water technology on a more level plane. Next slide, please. And so the main issue is that not all water sources are created equal. This chart on the left on Lake Powell is from a recent post from the Bureau of Reclamation, but it shows just how dramatic the decline has been since the 70s. And so if not all water sources are equal in terms of whether they're depleting our water resources or contributing to increasing them, we can't really treat them as equal. And so really what we need to be doing is we need to be encouraging technology solutions that actually create additional water and discouraging water sources that either deplete groundwater or deplete surface water. Because we're going to need really an enormous amount of additional water to make up for this type of a decline. And so that's the reason why what we're focused on here is how do we create a market for scaling up a new generation of infrastructure that can contribute this additional water. And of course, desalination is not new. Water treatment and reuse is not new. It's been around for a long time, and the United States is actually a leader in desalination technology, and NAWI's done a lot of great work to highlight that. But traditional desalination has an impact problem, and I don't know if folks saw the recent discussion between Elon Musk and the late night host here. But he was right that he made the comment that desalination is extremely cheap, and desalination is cheap. I think there's a nuance here that it's cheap for industry and maybe for consumption, but it's not cheap for agriculture. But the point is that there's another hidden constraint, and that constraint is the environmental impact. It's the brine discharge, it's the energy sources, and it's the ability to really develop desalination plants in a timely manner that's holding it back. And so we need to really remove these constraints in order to scale up to the levels that we're going to need to replace water from rivers like the Colorado River. Next slide, please. So what we're building is to try and imagine a different way, a way to kind of leverage the market to scale innovation. And getting back to the point, to try and figure out a way to build exactly the water future we want. So WaterDAO is a platform that we think can help, at least by building trustworthy and verifiable regenerative water credit classification, and I'll explain what that means, to issue and qualify projects that specifically have beneficial attributes. So what we're really trying to do is create a mechanism, much like renewable energy credits, that differentiates between water sources that are a long-term benefit and water sources that are a long-term liability. Next slide, please. So WaterDAO stands for Water Information Certification System DAO, LLC. And it's a decentralized autonomous organization for advanced water research. And that's a bit of a mouthful, but I'll get in to explain what that means. We are a Wyoming registered entity that's autonomously managed by smart contracts. And I'll explain what that means as well. Next slide. So first, just in terms of what a smart contract is, it's an agreement between two people or entities in the form of computer code, cryptography, that's programmed to execute automatically. So it's nothing more than a standard contract. It just happens to be in computer code, and it sort of automates the execution of it to make it a little bit easier to use, transferable, and digital. Next slide, please. So the smart contract that we created is called RH2O, which stands for regenerative water. And it's basically a contract that's programmed to execute automatically when a unit of regenerative water is produced. So we've designed it such that one RH2O equals 1 cubic meter of water. And the concept is that we use this smart contract to automatically issue a water credit anytime a unit of additional water is produced from a qualified source. So we obviously have lots of sources of additional water generation today, but what we're trying to do is come up with a framework for the types of water sources or water plants or water processes that we really want to encourage in the future and use this water credit to enhance them. So what is a DAO? DAO obviously stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, but it's really nothing more than a community. Next slide, please. It's basically just a community on a mission. So it's organized using smart contracts, and in that sense, the organization is really it's no different than a corporation. It just happens to be arranged using smart contracts. So you can think of a traditional corporation organization kind of with a top-down structure. And a DAO is organized around community proposals. So anybody that's a part of the DAO or part of the community can submit a proposal, and anybody that's part of the community can participate in making decisions around what proposals to fund and decision-making. So we've created this platform that we call ARPA-W around smart contracts, and we're using it to create what we call an autonomous research program agent for water, which is a decentralized research organization governed by community-led proposals. And I'll explain what that is as well. So first, we kind of sit at this intersection between what's called regenerative finance and decentralized science, and these are two sort of acronyms. But just to define them a little bit, regenerative finance uses money as a tool to create economic incentive to solve systemic problems and regenerate the environment. So it's basically a way of trying to build market incentives and market economics into solving problems of the environment, like water. And then the other side of what we're building is called decentralized science, which is an attempt to remove some of the legacy constraints and sort of institutional research biases that come with existing research institutions. So we're not trying to replicate what NAWI does or what the Department of Energy does or the Bureau of Reclamation. We're trying to create more of an alternative or a decentralized approach where research can take place anywhere amongst a community that really wants to focus on a very specific topic. And I'll talk a little bit about what the topics are that we've chosen to focus on. So first, just getting into kind of why we're focused on water credits and what's the value that we see in them. I think the value of water credits is very similar to the value of renewable energy credits, which is that they are cheaper, faster, and better than the alternative. So if you think about how renewable energy credits have been used in the past, it's a way for corporations to purchase clean energy, purchase it from renewable sources and renewable projects, and use it to offset the energy consumption that they would normally get from the utility. And renewable energy credits became a very, very powerful tool for allowing change to occur because it allowed corporations to basically say, this is the type of energy we want to purchase. It's the type of energy that's important to consumers. And so we're going to go out and purchase it from projects that we think make sense. What it creates is a much more efficient way of accomplishing the goals, rather than these corporations having to develop their own projects. So it advances, if it's used for water, it can advance regenerative water in a very efficient sort of market-based way. It can increase the quantity of water in the system by encouraging the development of projects that actually add water to the system. And it can entice developers to build projects where they make the most economic sense. And developers are very, very good at managing the risk around deploying technology and operating plants. And that's not something that large corporations like Amazon, Google, Facebook are very good at. So it's really trying to sort of put the risk in the hands of people that know how to build these types of projects. This chart on the right is just a chart we put together to demonstrate what distributed desalination is. But the idea is that you would have plants that generate water from a saline source, like saline groundwater, brackish groundwater. That water would go to the wholesale distributor. It would go back into the water system, kind of at the wholesale level. That water would be transferred to the local utility that provides water to, for example, a corporation like Facebook, and the end user would be purchasing water credits from that distributed desalination plant in order to create this additional water that is ending up back, even if it doesn't end up back at their water meter, it's ending up back within the watershed where their local utility is taking water. So it's a way to create additional incentive to develop these types of projects. Next slide, please. So the issue is really not that we need sort of an algorithm or smart contract based platform to find high impact water research. That's obviously something that organizations like NAWI already do very well. The main issue is that we need an algorithm to differentiate that research and the water that can be generated from it by automatically assigning economic value to it. So the purpose of the smart contract is to automatically assign this water credit, this additional value to the types of sources and the types of research that are going to lead to the kinds of water sources that we want in the future. So ARPA-W, what we're calling our research platform, is a funding experiment to fund water experiments. So it's something that we're experimenting with. We're trying to figure out how it can be useful. We're trying to figure out how it can be integrated for alleviating the institutional funding biases and constraints to achieving progress. So we're trying to use it to do things that maybe existing research institutions can't do, whether it's funding more mature deployments, things that aren't rooted in basic research, but with the goal really being to achieve progress, to actually get the wheel turning faster to deploying the technology that we need for the future. And just, again, to really reiterate the point, by subsidizing the water market, if we're not really comfortable sort of talking about the true cost of water, we quench the incentive to invest in high-risk technology. And I've learned this the hard way because I've been involved in trying to deploy, technology and process plants in the past. And it's very, very challenging when you're up against a subsidized market, especially one where you have a lot of legacy users that are, that basically expect to get water for almost nothing. And so the problem that we're grappling with here is how do we build new sources of water if we don't have any way to value them and fund them? So this smart contract based water credit that we developed is a mechanism to empower water users to make a choice about the types of water they use and direct resources towards them. So we're again trying to create a mechanism whereby a corporation or state or a water agency can make a choice about where the water is coming from and use water credits as a way to direct resources directly towards those projects. So a water credit, kind of at its core, is a payment today for future water. It's a way to make a payment today that goes towards the technology and the scale up and the maturation of these new sources of water. And in return, it's a way to own the benefits of regenerative water. So in the same way that a renewable energy certificate is a way to own the renewable benefits of renewable generation, that's what a water credit would do. And so we're trying, or what we're focused on is trying to use that mechanism as an accelerant for deploying advanced desalination. So what the RH2O water credit certifies is that water has been created. So it's very important, this concept of additive generation, because we really want water credits to represent additional water that was created that would not have existed before. And it has to be beneficial water, and it has to be measurable. So those are kind of the key attributes, that it's beneficial water, it comes from a source that we value versus sources that we think are going to cost us money in the future, that it's additive and that the water would not have existed otherwise, and that we have a way of actually measuring it. So RH2O is a protocol for proving that water was created. We call this proof of water, but it's basically an accounting system to prove that water was generated. And our goal is to use these water credits to direct funding to projects. So it's supposed to be used to create additional value to make these projects economical, whereas in a lot of instances, it's very challenging to scale up the technology. And the proof of water concept has value because it creates a mechanism to voluntarily value specific water generation sources like sustainable desalination. So it's something that has to begin on a voluntary basis. Obviously, there's no compliance market or regulatory drivers for a water credit. There are people that have explored it, but nothing has really taken shape. So anything that we're talking about around water credits really has to be on a voluntary basis. It has to be organizations, corporations, even states that say on a voluntary basis, we're going to start to value certain sources more because we think that it's necessary for the water system to become sustainable. And that voluntary mechanism is the same way that renewable energy credits started. So before there was a compliance market for RECs, there was a voluntary market. And so, yeah, obviously what we hope is that if water credits can catch hold, that it will lead to a voluntary market where participants have a choice. And so, you know, this is something that I do think is pretty important. Just as a technologist and an entrepreneur, I think this market mechanism is something that's really missing. And so we're hoping that it leads to a different future. So one of the things that's really open or important about what we're trying to do is to build this as an open source protocol. So the goal is not for us to build sort of just a proprietary water credit that we benefit from and nobody else can. The goal is really to create a completely open source platform. And so what that means is that anybody can adopt water credits. Anybody can benefit from them. Anybody can participate. Anybody can influence how these water credits are used in the market, what types of projects they're awarded to, how water is generated, what technologies we think are important. Because from my perspective, the only way that something like this will ever work is that if it's open source in a way that others can basically just build on top of it. So what my goal here at least is to just build sort of a platform, a baseline on which anybody can sort of integrate the basic protocol into any project that someone would want to pursue. And so the attributes of an open protocol that we think are important are for anyone to be able to join WaterDAO and participate in what we're doing. And that means making proposals, helping to decide what proposals are funding, helping to decide how a water credit is defined. Anyone can submit a research proposal So we do want to try and fund research that really helps develop the ecosystem around water credits and what types of projects they should be tied to. Anyone can be rewarded with water credits for producing water. So we're trying to create a very easy platform for anyone that's generating water now or proposing to generate water that fits within the criteria that we've created to be able to get water credits and use them as additional value. And anyone can join a project or a group or propose an idea and influence how the protocol is built out. So this is a snapshot of the website, which anyone can take a look at. But there's kind of four attributes of our RH2O holders that we're trying to build out: proposal-based decisions, rewards in terms of receiving water credits for participation, decentralized research, and water assets. Water assets are projects that we fund. We also have the ability to acquire assets if that helps the ecosystem, or acquire technology. And I'll explain a little bit more about that as well. So what we did as a start with the water credits is divide it into three classes that represent the three sort of main uses of water that we think are important. So class one is potable water, which would be any source of water or process technology that results in water that's considered potable and can go into the drinking water supply. Class two water credit would be environmental, so any source or use of water that's sufficient for the environment or agriculture. And class three is industrial, so that would be treatment of sources that are sort of not suitable for the environment or for drinking purposes, and are really just focused on industry or industrial reuse. And then in the top left-hand corner here, which is a little bit difficult to read from this slide, but we created just a basic 100-point scale to weigh the attributes of the sources of generation for each of these water classes. So we want to be able to create a framework to weight the energy source, whether it's novel process technology, the quality of water that's created, and any other attributes that would be important for someone that is purchasing water credits and wants to use these water credits to offset their water consumption. So, as the old saying goes, you can't manage what you can't measure. What we're hoping is that once you can actually measure these attributes and measure where water is coming from, that there's a way to leverage these water credits. So there's a few ways that water credits can be used. They can be used as an offset, which is sort of the most simple way. So anyone could purchase a water credit, retire it, and say that you're using it to offset water that you've consumed from a utility. So it just means that you've paid for water credits that represent additional water that was generated, went back into the system, and you're using it to offset the non-regenerative water that you get from your water utility. Corporations can obviously use them to become water positive or meet water neutrality goals, like we talked about earlier. So there's a lot of corporations that are looking to replenish water or looking to become water neutral, and purchasing water credits is a way of doing that. They can be used to create a voluntary sort of regenerative water portfolio standard. So organizations or agencies can set a standard voluntarily for how much water needs to come from regenerative sources. So you can set goals to and use water credits to meet them. Water agencies can support them to enable voluntary water markets. So it's a good way to create additional economic value in the market. They can also be used as a financial hedge. So we're trying to create in the future ways for water credits to be held and traded in the future if and when the market takes off. Obviously, they could have more value in the future. So just as by way of example, if we were to look at, for example, a zero discharge desalination plant, let's say there's demand for brackish desal, but it requires a zero discharge process to eliminate brine, which is something that's very common. And so if you assume, let's say brackish desal can be done for 60 cents a cubic meter, but adding zero liquid discharge technology brings the total cost up to $1 a cubic meter. It's obviously substantially more expensive to eliminate the brine and add zero discharge technology. And let's assume that water can be sold on a long-term basis at only 75 cents a cubic meter. So when you add ZLD, you sort of take yourself out of the wholesale market for selling water. But without ZLD, it's sort of very limited where you can develop projects, which I think is a constraint that brackish desal has now. So if the ZLD plant or the desal plant with ZLD is qualified as an additive source of renewable or sustainable or regenerative water, it could qualify for Class 1 water credits and would receive those water credits when water is generated. And so if you have a corporation or an agency that was willing to pay additional amount, let's say 75 cents per water credit, in order to own the beneficial attributes and be able to make a claim that the water was offset, which is what's done with energy, now the producer or the generator of that water can sell the physical water for 75 cents and the water credits for another 75 cents, which makes the process profitable. So it would result in 50 cents of additional profit and allow the water to be sold in the market by creating this additional economic value beyond just the physical water. So in that way, it would act just the same as a renewable energy credit, where it's kind of the credit is unbundled from the physical electron or the physical molecule of water. So I'll go into some of the projects that we funded. And again, as I mentioned before, part of the goal is to attempt to expand the scope of research. So be able to fund things that may not be a fit for traditional research organizations, either because they're further along, maybe it's not super novel technology, maybe it's really just deployment or other things, and use those as a way to begin to get a little bit more traction in the market. Yeah, so the first project we funded was expanding the CDAP platform, which was developed at Columbia University. So the goal of this project was really to kind of build a few things into the platform that they've already developed with some federal funding in a couple of areas. One was to include full ZLD. So we want to be able to estimate the cost of generating water using desalination with full ZLD, so that we can really estimate the true cost of kind of eliminating one of the main roadblocks to deploying desalination. And the second is that we've included a water credit algorithm to estimate what would the value of the water credit need to be in order to achieve water parity. So what's important for us when it comes to water credits is what's the delta between how much it costs to generate water anywhere where you'd be interested in it, and what is the value worth in that location. So what we're using CDAT for is to pick any point on the map, take the Central Valley of California, and estimate what the water credit would need to be worth to make the economics of generating additional water worthwhile. Because at the end of the day, that's really the purpose of the water credit, to act as a subsidy in order to achieve water parity. So we've got kind of a beta version of that up and running now. Next slide, please. The second area is solvent extraction desalination. So looking at ways that we can kind of advance to membraneless desalination, or use solvents as a way to both reduce the cost and simplify the desalination process. And I think solvents is a very interesting area, especially when it comes to treating brines, at concentrations where membrane-based technology is challenged. So we partnered with SWRI that has set up kind of a lab and piloting facility for us in San Antonio, and the University of Alabama, to look at sort of selection, screening, and synthesis of a whole host of solvents that we might want to consider looking at for pilot testing. And that's a project that'll be starting shortly here. And then we also funded a septic treatment project here in Orlando, Florida. So a dehumidification process for treating and reusing septic wastewater. This is an area where of Florida where the wastewater actually has to be trucked to an entirely different state altogether to be disposed of. And so we're working with EcoToken and NOAA Solutions to deploy a water treatment system that would allow for the water to stay local and be used for indirect potable reuse. And then we're working on a solar desalination demo. We're still looking for kind of the right partner to engage on this one, but we'd like to focus on demonstration of a full ZLD solar desalination using osmotic assisted RO. So either low salt rejection RO or osmotically assisted RO, but something where we can demonstrate using sort of conventional RO on the front end and maybe some more novel RO on the back end to get to full ZLD. And then an area where we're kind of looking for proposals, which I'm just calling OASIS for the time being, which would be osmotically assisted solvent extraction separation for desalination. So using novel agents, draw solutions. This picture here is from Jeff Urban's work, using ionic liquids or hydrogels, but anything that would look at kind of novel ways of recovering and regenerating the solvents for solvent extraction, and potentially have benefits in either lowering the energy, lowering the cost, or being able to do more with these solvents. So this is an area where, yeah, we're looking for ideas or people to partner with. And then, so, you know, when we fund these projects, one of the things that's pretty cool that you can do with smart contracts is fractionalize the assets. So it allows anyone who participates to own assets, own IP that comes out of these projects. And it can all be done in a sort of a very automated way using tokens, using the smart contract. So it's a sort of a very slick way to create a platform where anyone can participate in any particular project and actually directly benefit from anything that would come from that project, whether it's from the IP or generating water directly. And the other thing that we can do with these smart contracts is create what's called a non-fungible token, which is a unique token, something that's not fungible and represents something very unique. So when water credits are retired, just like you would have an old-fashioned kind of renewable energy certificate, we would create a non-fungible token, which is just a digital version of a renewable energy certificate, something that has the information embedded in the token as it relates to how much water was retired and offset. It certifies where the origin of the water came from and what type of project was used to generate it. So it's just kind of a digital certificate. And just a bit here on what the WaterDAO business model is, because obviously it needs to be sustainable in order to scale up water credits. But the way we think about it is the DAO would provide the software and the hardware for creating these water credits, mining them, verifying them, and the reporting that goes along with it. Because if you're using water credits to offset water, you need to have some reporting and accounting methodology behind it. And in return, the DAO would basically just keep some percentage of the water credits in the treasury. And the reason we do that is that the credits that are held in the treasury of the DAO need to eventually be tradable on an exchange in order to generate liquidity. So we have to have some liquidity pool for people that want to either just buy the water credits and sell them, or trade them, or have them be sort of floated on an exchange. And so that's what will allow us in the future to enable producers that generate these credits to be able to sell them and get the money and the profit in return to make the plant or the process technology economical. And also it'll allow individuals and organizations to be able to just buy credits versus sort of earning them from generating water. And so that's what would hopefully in the future lead to the value of these credits being determined by an open market, by supply and demand. And then in terms of collaboration opportunities, obviously I mentioned one where we're really looking for ideas and projects that could be funded. We're always looking for scientists, innovators, and technologists to get involved. I think the only way that this becomes valuable is if people are encouraged to kind of contribute, build on it, take it, make suggestions for how this could benefit the NAWI community. We obviously want to fund more projects, so I'm working on trying to find other projects that may fall kind of outside the conventional channels. We're looking for partners that have projects that could benefit from water credits. So if there's existing pilot projects or demo projects, or even fully mature projects that we think would be a good fit, we can attach water credits to those projects and then find ways to get the water credits into the market. We're looking for partners that could host or support pilot projects. That's always kind of one of the main limiting factors to developing process technologies, finding a place to do it. And we want to explore ways to adapt this model to fit with existing programs and agencies. So find ways that this type of water credit platform fits with how people are thinking about the water markets. And that's it. Thank you very much. And I guess, yeah, if we have time here, we can take some questions if there are any.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. We actually do have a couple of questions in the chat here, although I think you touched on these just a bit, but so we'll just kind of go through them. And anybody that hasn't submitted your question yet, you're more than welcome to do so while we're answering these others. We do have about 15 minutes for Q&A here at the end. So perfect timing, Aaron, and we'll go ahead and get started. So one question here is, who are your funding sources or anchors to date?
Yeah, so right now we're funded by venture capital. So we have an investor called Prime Movers Lab, which focuses on investing in technology like desalination, hard tech, kind of deep science stuff. And we are going to be expanding that funding, not just from private sources and venture capital, but looking for other sources, whether it's federal funding or other ways to support kind of growing the ecosystem.
All right, and here is another. We have a desalination technology that we have TRL-6 prototypes producing distilled water at half the energy of reverse osmosis. Our prototypes at TRL-8 that will be ready in Q4 for a pilot project will be 80% less energy consumption compared to RO and no membrane waste. We expect to have a commercial pilot for desal in late 24. Could we use your platform to finance RO desal plant buyouts and conversion to our efficient desal solution?
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Yes, send me an email. I'd definitely like to talk about that.
All right, and actually related to that, so there are some folks here who I think either missed or we didn't get to see your contact information, and so people are asking how they can reach out to you. So maybe we can have Pardeep put your email in the chat to everybody.
Yep.
Take care of that. All right. Here's another question. Can you give some examples of entities that could potentially sell water credits to receive an income stream?
Yeah, I mean, one obvious one is obviously a desalination plant. So that would be a great example of someone that would directly earn water credits in return for producing water. So the idea is that they would earn water credits and be able to sell them either in the open market, once if a market takes off, or sell them directly to a corporation or organization that wants to directly sponsor that desal plant, which I think is probably the more likely way that something like this would get started. In the future, obviously, for example, anybody can buy a renewable energy credit. So it should be open to not just producers of water, not just plants or facilities that generate water, but people that just want to buy water credits either to offset their consumption just because they want to contribute to the space or hold the water credits because they think they're going to be useful in the future.
All right, and apologies, apparently there was an Amber Alert in my area. We just are having all kinds of fun today. So with this webinar. All right. So I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, but maybe we can give folks just a minute. I do want to remind you that we will have the recording of this webinar posted, and we'll put that up in the NAWI Alliance community website. We will have a little bit of editing to do here, clearly, so it might take us until next week, but please go ahead and have some patience with us there. We've got another question that has come in. Thank you. And we do still have some time, folks, so if you have additional questions, please don't hesitate to put them in here. So the next question for you, Aaron. Do the research projects that you seek to fund have to engage with the water credits market in some way, or can they purely be focused on the water technology?
No, they can be focused on water technology. I think there's a scaling curve here where there's going to have to be funding for early stage projects, just basic research or even pilot plants or demonstrations in order to kind of scale up the ecosystem. So part of what we're hoping to do is be able to direct some of the proceeds from the sale of water credits to early stage projects, research, things that demonstrate how we want the water credits to be used or contribute to advancing process technologies.
And do you already have corporations buying the water credits, or is this still in development?
It's still in development. So the first project, which is the one in Florida here, will come online shortly. So we sort of need to be able to actually produce water in order to produce water credits in order to sell them. So, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation. But we're talking to a number of corporations. We're talking to groups that could potentially partner and help us scale up the water credits. But yeah, we're still in the very early days here.
All right, and we do have one comment. Somebody wanted to just state that OCWD water reuse is much cheaper than desal. I'm not sure if you would like to react to that.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think reuse projects can be great. There's a little bit of a stigma attached to water reuse. Depending on what the source is, which is one of the reasons why I sort of prefer distributed desalination. But yeah, that it can definitely be much cheaper.
All right. So here's another question. Is 75 cents per M3 a realistic credit value?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And when it comes to how we price the credits, I think a lot of it is going to have to be either, determined on an ad hoc basis or based on, the individual buyer. But the point of the water credit is that it has to make the underlying project economical. So it has to result in a way to actually generate profit. Otherwise, you're not really creating any type of market incentive. So if you're assuming that someone wants to sponsor the project and wants to sponsor a specific source of water, that's really what that really is what kind of sets the value or the price of the water credit. Otherwise, it really doesn't work. So, there was a time when renewable energy credits needed to be extremely expensive. I mean, there was a time when solar energy was 100 times more expensive than the power grid. So you have to start somewhere, and the goal is that once these technologies are scaled up and they can stand on their own 2 feet, you don't need water credits at all. So the objective is for the water credit to eventually fade away to zero, where desalination, even zero discharge desalination, is really just market competitive on an apples to apples basis. So yeah, it sort of depends. I think there's going to have to be some exploratory projects that look at what is a price that's reasonable. But you have to remember that when corporations are using water credits to offset their water, they have a very different end game. Their end game, like, just take Google, for example, their end game is to demonstrate to consumers that, their data centers and their operations aren't, draining Silicon Valley's water source. So they're monetizing the water credits in a very different way. They're not looking at a water credit and saying, is that equal to 1 unit of water? They're looking at it and saying, is it worth us using these water credits as a way to promote additional generation when we're going to claim that we've offset the water?
Okay, and we actually are going to touch back on OCWD for just a moment. Would water reuse like at OCWD be a source water like DeSci, where an entity like OCWD could potentially sell the water credits?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. I mean, and that's the goal, is to find projects like that, where we can make the claim that it's a beneficial source, that's regenerative water, and that it's something that leads to being able to scale up a lot of our alternative production. So yes.
All right, we've got a good question here. How will, not to suggest the other ones haven't been, these have been good, but I have been waiting to get to this one, so apologies. How will the water credits be regulated? Unregulated crypto trading on places like Binance, I'm not sure. A regulated commodity contract traded on the regulated futures exchange as a security.
Yeah, so I think there's a whole bunch of issues there, obviously, with crypto that will get worked out in due course with the regulators and a lot of the mature companies that are operating exchanges like Coinbase and Binance. That's, I don't think, something that's our concern, because right now we don't have any type of a token that's on an exchange yet. Everything that we're doing right now is just purely on a voluntary basis. So it really is just at the level where people out of their own free will think that this is an important mechanism to stand up, that there's research projects, demos, plants that are important to support, and all we're doing is using this water credit as a protocol to kind of measure that. So I don't think we're getting into any of those regulatory issues at this point in time.
All right, thank you for that. And here's one last one. Why is transportation not included in seawater desalination? And I'm not sure if perhaps that's a question more about cost.
If it's a question related to distribution, maybe that's what the focus is. But on the CDAT platform that we've been working on with Columbia, we are including distribution as part of the cost. So when we look at what it costs to generate water versus the existing water grid, we are including both the cost of getting the resource. So if it's coming from brackish groundwater, getting it, treating it, and distributing it to whatever is the nearest distribution point in the infrastructure. So we are trying to look at kind of the fully loaded cost, because again, that's what the water credit has to represent.
All right. I think that concludes all of the questions. Oh, nope, I lied. One more coming in, and we do have a couple of minutes, so maybe time for one or two more. So I think this is one. How big is your team?
Right now we have, let's see, about 5 people working on this. So we have a few full-timers. We've got some sort of advisors and consultants, and then we do a lot of our work through partnerships. So when it comes to like the crypto stuff, that's outsourced to firms that have the expertise to put these protocols in place. And we're trying to keep the water team just very focused on how we define the water credit. Obviously, the research projects that we're working on, and finding new partnerships.
So here's one. Oh, several more coming in. So we'll try to get to these maybe last 2 here. So shouldn't inland brackish water be considered a finite resource, not necessarily renewable?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know if I have the answer to that, because I think there's actually quite a bit of scientific debate on whether brackish water is truly renewable. I think at least from my perspective, it dramatically expands the base of water that can be drawn on. I'm sure there are ways to demonstrate that if it's, you know, that it's over pumped, that it's not 100% sustainable. But there was a paper that came out from Rob Jackson's lab at Stanford that showed that if you include brackish water, I think he went up to about 3,000 parts per million, it increases the amount of available water in California alone by something like 3 times. So it's at least a way of dramatically increasing the amount of water that we're drawing on, which I think is a step in the right direction. And then obviously there's some debate that needs to be had about how renewable it truly is.
All right, and we've got time for just one more. Is it just a software and data infrastructure platform, or are you building and developing projects physically yourselves?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So right now we're focused on the software, but we are also trying to build a hardware device that would be mounted to like a water meter, so that we can register the water credits directly. Because at the end of the day, if a water credit has any value, we want to be able to ensure that it's trustworthy, that you can't sort of, you know, tamper with it, say you generated water when you didn't. So we're trying to create a device that would directly basically mint a water credit by registering the data that's coming off of the water meter directly. And I think that's something that WaterDAO would contribute to a facility that was earning water credits.
All right, well, that puts us at time. Aaron, thank you so much. And thank you to all of our participants who are here and very actively engaged. We appreciate you all. And we will post this, like I said, on the NAWI Alliance Community website Media Center, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care.